The confetti cannon thudded before the sound reached Naomi's ears. Red and gold paper burst across the midnight sky, as if the stars themselves were cheering for Darius. He stood on the marble steps of the rented Buckhead mansion in Atlanta, a champagne bottle in one hand and a giant check in the other. The number printed on the board glowed under the floodlights. $700 million. Cameras flashed. A brass band hammered out a triumphant tune that rattled the glass. Neighbors pressed against the iron gates, phones lifted high. TV vans crowded the curb. Reporters shouted questions. Darius smiled like a preacher on Easter Sunday. "Tonight," he boomed into the microphone, "God has favored me, Darius Cole. The biggest jackpot in state history. I told y'all I was born for something greater." The crowd roared. The band struck a faster rhythm. A woman in a red blazer from the Lottery Commission hovered beside him, nodding while a handler adjusted her earpiece. Darius lifted the bottle and sprayed the steps, soaking two camera operators who laughed and wiped their lenses. Naomi stood on the sidewalk beyond the gate, the only person who wasn't clapping. The December air bit through her thin sweater, but it wasn't the cold that made her teeth press together. It was the ink-black marker line she remembered dragging across the back of a small pink slip 3 nights ago. It was the way Darius had left that same evening and returned the next morning humming a tune he'd never heard before, a tune made of money. A guard in a black jacket noticed her and frowned. "You can't stand there, ma'am. Keep moving." "That's my husband," Naomi said, pointing with the hand that kept drifting toward her bag. "I'm his wife." The guard looked from her thrift store flats to the mansion. "Everybody's his cousin tonight," he said. "Please step away." On the steps, Darius called for quiet, soaking in the attention. His smile sharpened when he finally saw her. He lifted the microphone like a judge raising a gavel. "Before we party, I have a message for someone." Naomi felt a strange hush fall over the crowd. Even the band rested. She could hear a generator thrumming, a camera's autofocus whirring, a child asking his mother what was happening. Darius pointed his champagne bottle at the gate. "Naomi," he said, voice syrup smooth and loud enough to echo. "You don't live here no more." Gasps flittered up like startled birds. The lottery rep blinked. 2 other men in suits, lawyers by the look of their thin smiles, stepped forward and handed something to the guard, who carried the envelope to the gate and pushed it through. Naomi held it without opening it. She didn't need to. She could already feel the shape of the words inside. Vacate, dissolution, property, immediate. "Darius," she called, keeping her voice level. "We need to talk." He chuckled into the microphone. "We talked when you burned the jollof last week. This right here?" He lifted the check. "This is a new conversation. And it don't include you." Flashbulbs stuttered. Someone laughed too loudly. Naomi could see neighbors' faces pressed between the bars. Some looked away embarrassed. Others leaned in with hungry eyes. The band leader coughed and quietly tuned a horn. The lottery rep in the red blazer whispered to a handler. Naomi slid the envelope into her bag and kept her gaze on Darius. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. "Security," Darius said, not looking at her. "Escort the lady off the property." 2 guards started down the drive. Naomi felt her chest tighten, but she didn't step back. Her hand found the folded receipt and the photocopy inside her bag, the one she had made on the corner store's coin-operated machine, more out of habit than wisdom. She thought of the store's humming soda cooler and the old Igbo man behind the counter who had said, "Good numbers, madam. Dreams speak." She thought of the numbers that had come to her in a half-sleep, her grandmother's birthday, her own age, the digits on a faded bus ticket, and how she had smiled as the ticket printed, signing her name across the back the way her father taught her. Sign first, then breathe. Naomi didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply looked at the check again and let the last 3 nights replay themselves. 3 nights earlier, Naomi had been up late, sewing a ripped pocket back onto Darius's good jacket. He had a meeting the next day at a showroom where he wanted to sell his custom sneakers, and he needed to look sharp. The needle pricked her finger. A bead of blood rose and she pressed it to her tongue, then to a piece of tissue. On the TV, a news anchor mentioned the lottery rollover. The jackpot had climbed higher than anyone expected. Naomi rarely gambled. Money was a serious thing in her world, a thin blanket that never covered 2 people at once. But that night, everything felt off-kilter. The landlord had sent a warning about late rent. Darius had promised the showroom deal was finally coming together, but he'd said that 5 times before. Naomi closed her eyes and saw numbers rush past like fish in dark water. She wrote down the ones that stuck. At the corner store, the clerk recognized her. "Powerball again?" he asked. Just one, she said. And I'm signing it right here. He slid her the slip. She wrote her name, Naomi Rivers, across the back in neat block letters. He watched, approving. Smart, he said. People come in here crying after they lose tickets. Name is a life jacket. She smiled. I'll keep it on. When she got home, Darius was on the couch, phone in hand, laughing at a video. He asked what took her so long. She said nothing about the ticket. She had learned to keep some things small and quiet, the way her grandmother kept a piece of charcoal to draw blessings over doorways. They ate hummus and plantain chips for dinner and fell asleep with the TV murmuring about weather. In the morning, the ticket was not where she left it. Darius, you seen something pink on the dresser? She asked. He shrugged, eyes on his phone. You lose socks every week. Pink socks, blue socks. I told you to organize. She searched the drawers, the laundry basket, the space behind the dresser where dust bunnies live like little gods. Nothing. She told herself she misplaced it. People misplace hope all the time. It doesn't mean hope was stolen. When the numbers came up on the evening news, Naomi stared at the screen, breath held, like a diver looking up at the underside of ice. One by one, the numbers matched her scribble on the crumpled memo in her pocket. She looked at Darius. He looked at her. The TV said $700 million. Darius rose slow, as if standing into a new body. You didn't really buy it, he said, but his voice shook. He turned to the dresser, to the laundry basket, to the back of the dresser where dust gods slept. He moved with the wild hands of a fisherman who feels a line go taut. Naomi stood very still. I signed it. He laughed too loud. If you signed it, then show me. She reached for her bag, then stopped. The ticket wasn't there. She hadn't put it in her bag. She had left it on the dresser after signing. She'd wanted to show Darius later, when the day had cooled and his pride was quiet. He left the apartment that night and didn't come back until the sun cut a hard line against the blinds. He smelled like cologne he didn't own. His eyes trembled when he said he needed space to think. The next day his phone stopped going to voicemail. The day after that, Naomi saw his face on TV. Now, on the mansion steps, Darius let the crowd swallow him. He was already telling reporters about a charitable foundation he planned to create. We'll build schools, he said. We'll sponsor young entrepreneurs. There's so much I can do. His voice stretched the word I until it shone like taffy. The guards reached Naomi. One gestured to the sidewalk. Ma'am, please. Naomi's fingers tightened around the folded photocopy in her bag. The lottery rep in the red blazer glanced down at a tablet, frowned, and whispered to her handler again. The handler's eyebrows lifted. He looked from the tablet to the giant check to Darius and then, slowly, toward the gate where Naomi stood. A wind rose, dragged confetti along the drive, and plastered it against the bars like bright leaves after rain. Naomi watched one piece of red paper stick to Darius's shoe and thought of the small notch she had accidentally torn from the ticket's corner when she signed it. A tiny bite, like a mouse had tested it. The lottery rep cleared her throat and stepped to the microphone. Mr. Cole, before we move forward, there is a routine verification step. Darius smiled, but the edges of it quivered. We did all that, he said. Paperwork's in your office. Of course, she said, her eyes scanning the crowd, landing on Naomi with a jolt of recognition that made the handler lean closer. But there is also a personal verification. It regards the signature on the back of the ticket. The band leader straightened. The cameras inched closer. The neighbors pressed tighter against the gate. Naomi felt the guards hesitate by her side. Darius laughed again, but it came out thin. Signature? My signature's good. The rep lifted her tablet, then turned without warning and pointed toward the gate. Is there a Naomi Rivers present? Silence fell so fast it sounded like a sound of its own. Darius's smile froze. The guard stepped back from Naomi as if she had become electricity. Naomi drew the photocopy from her bag, its edges soft from being unfolded and smoothed, unfolded and smoothed. On it, a set of numbers danced in gray ink, and across the faint rectangle of the ticket's back ran a name in block letters, clear as a road sign on a bright day. The handler opened the gate with a beep and a groan. The rep's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were storm-bright. Ma'am, she said to Naomi, the commission needs to speak with you, alone, before any funds are released. Darius took a step down, champagne dripping from his bottle onto the white stone. What is this? He demanded, voice cracking. What is she doing here? Naomi tucked the photocopy back into her bag and lifted her chin. She didn't move yet. She didn't need to. The wind moved for her, tossing confetti like old debts coming due. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone pinged with an incoming message. On the mansion's balcony, A reporter raised a hand to his earpiece, eyebrows flying up. The band leader dropped his baton and it clattered down the steps. The rep took one more step toward Naomi, and her next words sliced through the night. "Ms. Rivers," she said, "did you sign the winning ticket, and can you prove it right now?" The handler guided Naomi through the buzzing gate and into the marble foyer. The air inside the mansion smelled like lilies and new money. A chandelier threw rainbows across the ceiling, and the floor shone so clean she could see the confusion on her own face reflected back at her. The lottery rep in the red blazer introduced herself as Ms. Alvarez, voice low and steady, as if they were standing in a library instead of the center of a storm. "We need two things," Ms. Alvarez said, leading Naomi into a quiet side room away from the cameras. "Proof you signed the ticket, and any information about how Mr. Cole came to possess it." Naomi laid the photocopy on the table and slid it forward. "I signed first. I always signed first. My daddy taught me that after he fixed a scratch-off machine in Newark and folks swore him down he'd stolen their prize." Ms. Alvarez studied the copy, then turned to the handler, who was already typing. "We'll need security footage from the corner store," she said. "Timestamp 3 nights ago about 10 p.m. And someone call the store owner to keep the DVR safe." The handler nodded and slipped outside. Naomi's fingers went to the thin gold ring on her left hand, circling it like a worry bead. She could hear the party resuming beyond the walls, the band cautiously picking up a beat, reporters testing questions like knives on a whetstone, neighbors whispering behind their hands. And she could still hear Darius's voice, flat as a slammed door. "You don't live here no more." Ms. Alvarez looked up. "Can you tell me how Mr. Cole got the ticket?" Naomi swallowed, then told the truth she'd been choking back since the morning she realized the dresser top was too clean. "I left it out after I signed it. I planned to show him later, when he'd be happy for me instead of measuring me." She paused, searching for the right word. "I guess he saw it before I could put it away." Ms. Alvarez didn't flinch. "Did you file a police report?" "I didn't even know what to report," Naomi said, a humorless smile flickering and dying. "I couldn't say, 'My husband took a scrap of paper I can't find,' without sounding like a fool." She didn't add the rest, that Darius had always had a long arm and a fast mouth. That when they met on a bright Sunday in College Park at a church barbecue, he had borrowed her folding chair and returned it with a plate loaded like a favor from God, jollof piled high, fried whiting crisp and golden, salad dressed just so. He'd sat next to her and said, "The sun is showing off in your eyes," and her auntie had laughed and called him smooth like a Lagos radio host. He was charming then, a man who pulled out chairs and opened jars and knew the names of half the kids in the neighborhood. Back then, Naomi worked mornings at a hair-braiding salon and nights hemming prom dresses in their one-bedroom apartment. She'd learned needlework beside her mother, who ran a tiny shop off Flatbush when Naomi was little, her hands moving so fast the thread looked like a stream of light. Naomi kept the lights on and the pantry stocked. Darius was always working on something, a hustle or a plan, a streetwear brand, a barbershop that never opened because the landlord changed his mind, a podcast with 2 episodes and a silent third. He could talk a fish out of water, but he could never teach it to breathe. They married under a live oak with ribbons in its branches. The preacher's robe flapped in the heat. Darius whispered promises into Naomi's hair. "I'll make you proud," he said. "I'll make you safe." But the rent notices kept arriving in pink envelopes, and the showroom always needed one more prototype, and Darius's laughter got sharper when anyone asked when. "People don't believe until you've already done it," he'd say, chest out. "I'm right at the door." Naomi waited at that door with him for years, until the door to a mansion that wasn't home swung open and a woman in a red blazer asked if she had signed her name. Ms. Alvarez slid a printed photo from a folder and set it beside the photocopy. It was the front of the winning ticket, photographed at the commission office. The back was blurred for privacy, but a rectangle of raised fibers was visible near the signature strip, like someone had rubbed at it too hard. "This came in with Mr. Cole's claim," she said carefully. "The back shows signs of abrasion. Removal of a signature is common in fraud attempts. If the original name was erased, we can still detect it chemically. But that takes time. Tonight, we need to know whether there's immediate cause to halt a public payout." Naomi's chest tightened. "He erased me," she whispered, the words tasting like metal. A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. The handler returned with an officer in a navy jacket, Atlanta PD, and an older man in a windbreaker zipped up to his throat. The officer gave Naomi a respectful nod. The older man's eyes were wet and bright. "Madam," he said with a soft Nigerian lilt, "I am Okoro from the corner store. When your call came, I understood. I brought the tape. He held up a plastic case. Inside, a thumb drive glinted. Naomi let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. You remembered me signing? Mr. Okoro chuckled. I remember everyone who signs. My wife says I have a librarian's brain. A librarian and a gossip. He tipped his head toward Ms. Alvarez. Cameras show the counter. They see the hands that buy and the hands that pay. They crowded around the table while the handler slid the drive into a laptop. The screen lit and grainy black and white footage appeared. The corner store's narrow aisle, a cooler of sodas humming at the back, a line of customers moving like a tired dance. They fast-forwarded 3 nights. There was Naomi in her denim jacket, a scarf around her head, smiling politely at Mr. Okoro as she handed him the slip. They watched her pull out a pen, flip the ticket over and sign in neat block letters, Naomi Rivers. They saw her slide the ticket into her pocket, then pull it out again and look at it as if confirming a private miracle. And they saw her leave. Then, several hours later, another clip. The upstairs camera just inside Naomi and Darius's apartment door. The angle wasn't great, but a sliver of the bedroom doorway was visible if you knew where to look. Darius walked through, shirtless, phone at his ear, eyes scanning the dresser top. He hesitated, then reached out. He turned something over in his hands, looked at it long, then tucked it into his wallet. The room fell silent but for the laptop fan. The officer spoke first. Ma'am, that's enough probable cause for us to open a theft investigation. Given the value, it's grand larceny. Ms. Alvarez nodded firmly. We're halting the public ceremony, she said, snapping the laptop shut. No funds move tonight. We'll announce an internal hold pending verification of the rightful claimant. From the lawn, an uncertain cheer rose and died. The band's tempo stuttered. Through the open doorway, Naomi could see Darius on the steps, hands spread, trying to keep the attention on him with that same giant smile that used to make people forgive late arrivals and big promises. Ms. Rivers, Ms. Alvarez said softly, we'll need the original ticket if you can get it. The chemical test will help, the footage helps, your photocopy helps, but the original ends everything. The original is with him, Naomi said. He keeps important things in a black zippered wallet, left inside the safe under his shoe boxes. There's a code he thinks I don't know. She bit her lip and looked up. I know it. The officer raised an eyebrow. We can get a warrant, but that won't be immediate. If the item's in a shared residence, recovery can be messy without papers. And if he moved it? Naomi's mind raced. Darius knew how to perform generosity when the lights were on, but in quiet rooms he hoarded what mattered most. Last say, first slice, final word. He had eyes like a hawk for what belonged to other people. But he also had habits he thought were secrets. He trusted his cousin Trey with the codes. He drank too much when he felt big. He bragged when he felt scared. As if conjured by her thoughts, Darius's voice boomed from the front. I told y'all everything's in order. Haters gonna hate. Ms. Alvarez stood. I'll go make the announcement, she said. To the officer, stay with Ms. Rivers. To Mr. Okoro, sir, thank you. Please give us your contact information. They filed out, leaving Naomi with the officer in the quiet room. The chandelier light seemed suddenly colder. Outside, camera shutters snapped like teeth. Her phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. She glanced at the officer, then swiped to open the message. A picture filled the screen, a black zippered wallet open on a granite countertop. Inside, a pink lottery ticket lay snug against a plastic sleeve. Naomi zoomed in, heart thudding. In the bottom corner, just where the paper dipped, she saw the tiny notch she'd made when the pen caught the edge. It was her ticket. No doubt. Another message arrived before she could breathe. Meet me at the old Fulton train depot. Midnight. Come alone. Or the ticket burns. The night air was thick with fog when Naomi pulled up near the old Fulton train depot. The massive brick building loomed in the distance like an abandoned giant, its shattered windows staring down at her like eyes that remembered too much. Streetlights flickered along the empty road, their glow cutting through the mist in trembling cones. Naomi parked her old Toyota just far enough from the entrance to stay hidden. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she switched off the engine. For a moment she sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel. Midnight. The word itself felt heavy. It wasn't just the middle of the night, it was the middle of everything. Between who she used to be and what she was about to become. She checked her phone again. The message from Darius, or whoever sent it, stared back at her. Meet me at the old Fulton train depot. Midnight. Come alone. Or the ticket burns. Her stomach clenched. If Darius really had the ticket, and she was sure he did, then tonight would decide everything. She glanced down at the small voice recorder Ms. Alvarez had slipped her just before she left the mansion. "If you go," Alvarez had said, her voice calm but sharp, "record everything. Don't confront him. Just let him talk. We'll have officers nearby, but don't give him reason to run." Naomi nodded back then, but now, sitting in the car with fog curling against her windows, she wasn't sure she believed in anyone's backup. The depot's massive doors creaked open, and a single light blinked inside. Naomi took a deep breath, grabbed the recorder and slipped it into the pocket of her hoodie. Then she stepped out into the night. Her footsteps echoed across the cracked pavement. A rat scurried by. Somewhere inside, metal groaned as if the building itself were alive. "Darius?" she called softly. "I'm here." No answer. She walked deeper in. The light was coming from a flickering lantern sitting on a wooden crate in the center of the dusty hall. And beside it, leaning against a broken pillar, was Darius. He looked nothing like the man who'd stood on those marble steps hours earlier, grinning for the cameras. His designer suit was gone, replaced by a dark hoodie and sweatpants. His eyes were bloodshot, restless. A half-empty bottle of cognac sat at his feet. "Naomi," he said, his voice slurred but bitterly calm. "You just couldn't let me have this one thing, could you?" Naomi's throat tightened. "You stole it, Darius. You took my ticket." He scoffed, running a hand over his beard. "Your ticket? You bought it with our money. You used my change from the store. You signed it, sure, but who made the dream real? Who cashed it in? Who knew what to do with it?" "You mean who lied?" she said quietly. "Who betrayed me?" Darius's jaw flexed. "You were never supposed to find out. You always wanted control. Every bill, every grocery, every rent notice, your name on everything. But this." He pointed at the duffel bag beside him. "This was finally mine." Naomi's eyes dropped to the bag. "What's that?" He grinned. "Insurance." He unzipped it and Naomi's heart lurched. Inside was the black wallet, and next to it stacks of bundled cash. "I withdrew 500 grand before Alvarez froze the payout," he said proudly. "You think they can touch that? I earned it. They don't know half of it's gone." "You're going to destroy yourself," Naomi said. "You think money's going to fix the rot in you?" Darius laughed, cold, sharp. "Rot? You mean ambition. You think small, Naomi. That's your problem. You never saw the empire I was building. You just wanted safety." Naomi took a careful step forward. "Give me the ticket, Darius. You can still make this right. You can tell them the truth." "Truth?" he repeated. "There's no truth. There's only the story people believe. And right now, the world believes I'm the millionaire." He pulled the pink ticket from the wallet and held it up between two fingers. The paper fluttered slightly in the draft. Naomi's pulse roared in her ears. "Darius, please. Don't do this." He grinned almost gently. "You always begged nice, Naomi." Then he struck a match. The flame hissed to life, bright against the dark. He brought it dangerously close to the corner of the ticket. Naomi's body moved before her mind could. She lunged forward, knocking his hand aside. The match fell hissing out on the dusty floor. "Don't," she cried. Darius shoved her back. The recorder in her pocket beeped faintly. "You don't scare me, Naomi," he said, advancing. "You're weak. You've always been weak. That's why you sew dresses while I make headlines." Naomi steadied herself. "No, Darius. I'm the one who built everything that kept us standing. You just took credit for it." He raised his voice. "I took what I deserved." And that's when she saw it, red and blue lights slicing through the fog outside. A police siren wailed in the distance. Darius froze, realizing too late that the faint beeping he'd heard wasn't from her phone. It was the recorder transmitting live. Within seconds, officers poured through the depot's doors, flashlights cutting through the dark. "Atlanta PD. Step away from her." Darius spun around, panic twisting his face. "You set me up?" "You set yourself up," Naomi said softly. He bolted toward the back exit, clutching the ticket and the duffel bag, but the officers were faster. Two of them tackled him hard to the ground. The bag burst open, money spilling everywhere like paper rain. The ticket slipped from his hand, landing face up near Naomi's feet. She knelt, carefully picking it up with trembling fingers. The tiny notch in the corner was still there. The ink of her signature was faint but visible. Ms. Alvarez stepped forward through the doorway, her expression unreadable but triumphant. "We got everything we needed," she said. "Every word." Darius's voice cracked as they cuffed him. "You can't do this. That ticket was mine." Alvarez turned the ticket toward the flashlight beam. "No, Mr. Cole," she said coolly. The signature tells a different story. Naomi's eyes filled, not with tears of victory, but with something like relief and sorrow tangled together. Darius was let out, shouting, cursing, his voice echoing off the walls of the depot until it faded completely. When the silence returned, Naomi looked down at the ticket in her hand. The same one she'd bought with trembling fingers, never imagining it would destroy a marriage and reveal who her husband really was. Alvarez touched her arm gently. "You'll need to come with us to finalize everything. The commission will announce the rightful winner after verification. But, congratulations, Ms. Rivers. You are the legitimate owner." Naomi exhaled shakily. "I don't even know how to feel." Alvarez smiled softly. "Start with free." They walked toward the exit, the dawn light beginning to stretch across the horizon. Outside, Naomi paused and looked back once more at the depot, the place where greed finally burned itself out. She whispered to herself, "Sometimes karma doesn't knock. It walks right in." If you're enjoying this story so far, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves a good twist of fate. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if your spouse stole your winning lottery ticket? Have you ever seen someone lose everything because of greed? We'd love to hear your thoughts below. Morning broke slowly over Atlanta, painting the sky in soft streaks of orange and pink. Naomi sat by the wide glass window inside the Lottery Commission's main office, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. The warmth did nothing to settle the storm inside her. Behind her, voices murmured, lawyers, officials, and Ms. Alvarez coordinating the next steps. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the photocopy, the recorded confession. Everything lined up perfectly. And yet, Naomi didn't feel like someone who just won $700 million. She felt like someone who had survived a hurricane. Ms. Alvarez entered the room holding a file and her tablet. "Naomi," she said gently, "we finished the chemical analysis. The results confirm what we already knew." She placed a photo on the table, a magnified image of the ticket signature strip. Beneath faint streaks of erased ink, one name glowed clear: Naomi Rivers. Naomi closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. "You're officially the winner," Alvarez continued. "After the press briefing, your account will be set up to receive the payout in 2 weeks. But I need to prepare you, this is going to be very public. The media already knows your name." Naomi nodded slowly. "Let them know," she said. "The truth deserves daylight." Alvarez smiled, impressed by her calm. "That's a strong attitude, Ms. Rivers. But are you sure you want the world to know who you are? With this kind of money, privacy becomes a luxury." Naomi looked out the window, watching the reflection of the rising sun shimmer on the glass buildings across the street. "My husband dragged my name through mud on live TV," she said. "He took my dignity in front of the world. I think it's only right the truth shows up the same way." Alvarez nodded. "Then we'll make it happen." 2 hours later, the press conference began. Reporters filled the hall like a restless ocean of cameras and microphones. The same faces that had cheered for Darius last night now turned eagerly toward the podium where Naomi stood. She was dressed simply, a navy blue dress, her hair braided neatly down her back, no diamonds, no designer shoes. Just grace and composure. Alvarez stood beside her, addressing the crowd. "After a thorough investigation," she began, "the Georgia Lottery Commission has verified the rightful owner of the $700 million jackpot. The ticket was unlawfully claimed by an individual who has now been taken into custody." Flashbulbs exploded. Reporters leaned forward, scribbling furiously. "And today," Alvarez continued, "we're proud to introduce the true winner of the largest jackpot in state history, Ms. Naomi Rivers." The room erupted. Naomi stepped to the microphone, the sound of applause and camera clicks washing over her. For a second she froze, unsure how to start. Then she spoke. "When I bought that ticket, I didn't know it would change my life. I just wanted a small chance at hope, a light in a dark week." Her voice trembled slightly but grew steadier with every word. "I never imagined the person I trusted most would turn that hope into something ugly. But maybe this is how life works sometimes. It tears you apart before it teaches you your worth." The audience fell silent. "I don't stand here today to boast," Naomi continued. "I stand here to remind every person, especially every woman, never to underestimate your signature, your voice, or your power. Because the same thing someone tried to erase might be the very thing that saves you." The applause this time was softer, deeper, respectful. Naomi stepped back as Alvarez concluded the briefing. The crowd pressed in with questions, but Naomi didn't answer any. She'd said all she needed to. That night the news spread like wildfire. Betrayed wife claims $700 million lottery after husband's fraud. Love, lies and lotto, the story of Naomi Rivers. The world couldn't get enough. Her phone buzzed nonstop, calls from talk shows, distant cousins, even childhood friends she hadn't spoken to in years. But Naomi ignored most of them. She wasn't ready for the world's noise yet. Instead, she visited a small graveyard on the outskirts of town. The ground was damp from last night's rain. She knelt before a modest headstone that read, Margaret Rivers, 1957 to 2019. She worked with her hands and loved with her heart. Naomi laid a bouquet of white lilies at its base. Mama, she whispered, I finally got out. You told me to keep faith even when people make you small. You said God sees every secret. Her eyes filled. You were right. A breeze lifted her braids, and for a moment she thought she felt her mother's warmth, soft and approving. She stood and looked out at the horizon. The money didn't matter, not yet. What mattered was that the truth had won. But as she walked back to her car, her phone buzzed again, this time with an unfamiliar number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A man's voice came through, calm and deliberate. Mrs. Rivers, my name is Marcus Glenn. I'm Darius's lawyer. Naomi's jaw tightened. You have some nerve calling me. I understand how you feel, Marcus said evenly. But my client has asked to speak with you before sentencing. He claims he has information that might interest you. Naomi's hand froze on the car door. Interest me how? Marcus lowered his voice. He says the ticket wasn't the only thing he took from you. Her blood ran cold. What does that mean? He insists he left something in the safe, a letter, and that only you'll understand it. He says if you don't come see him, it might be too late. Naomi's pulse quickened. Too late for what? But Marcus didn't answer. He's being transferred tomorrow morning. If you want to hear him out, you'll need to visit tonight. After that, he'll be gone for a long time. The line went dead. Naomi stood there for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the car window. Darius had already taken her peace, her trust, her years. What could he possibly have left that she needed to hear? Still, something deep in her gut whispered that she had to go. That night, as thunder rolled over the city, Naomi drove to the county detention center. Unaware that Darius's final secret would change everything she thought she knew about their marriage, and about the lottery itself. Rain drummed against the windshield like a warning. The county detention center stood at the end of a narrow road, cold and colorless, surrounded by fences topped with coiled barbed wire that glinted each time lightning split the sky. Naomi parked under a flickering streetlight, her hands trembling slightly as she turned off the ignition. She hadn't wanted to come. Every sensible part of her told her not to. But curiosity, the same stubborn spark that made her buy that lottery ticket in the first place, pulled her forward. Inside, the security guard at the front desk glanced at her ID and raised an eyebrow. You're here for Darius Cole? Naomi nodded. He's in holding, waiting for transfer. 10 minutes max, the guard said, pressing a buzzer. Keep it civil. As the metal door clanked open, Naomi stepped into the visitation room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rows of glass panels separated visitors from inmates. On the other side, Darius sat slouched in a gray jumpsuit, his wrists cuffed, his once perfect hair now uneven and dull. For the first time since their marriage began, he looked small. Naomi took a slow breath and sat across from him. He smiled weakly, but his eyes flickered with something between pride and desperation. Naomi Rivers. The woman of the hour. Guess congratulations are in order. She didn't smile. You said you had something to tell me. Say it. He leaned forward, his voice low and shaky. Before you start preaching, just know. I didn't plan for things to end like this. I was angry, yeah, but I didn't hate you. Could have fooled me, she said sharply. Darius sighed, glancing down at his cuffed hands. You think you know everything, but you don't. You remember the safe under the shoe boxes. Naomi nodded slowly. Yes. You kept the ticket there. He shook his head. I kept something else too. A letter. For you. From your father. Naomi froze. Her father had died when she was 17. That's not possible, she whispered. Oh, it's possible, Darius said. Your mom gave it to me years ago. Said he wrote it before he passed. She wanted me to hold on to it until you were strong enough to hear what was inside. Naomi stared at him, stunned. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't need another reason to leave me, Darius said bitterly. And later, After everything went bad between us, I figured it was better buried. But after what happened, I realized maybe you deserved to know." She clenched her fists. "You kept a letter from my father for years? Why now?" "Because it explains something about that ticket," Darius said. "And about your luck." Her heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean?" He looked over his shoulder at the guard, then leaned closer to the glass. "Your father wasn't just a mechanic like he told everyone. He worked for the state lottery system. Back in the day before digital draws. He used to help run the machines that picked the numbers. He told your mom he figured out a formula, something about probability sequences and recurring cycles. He said someday one of his numbers would hit big." Naomi's mouth went dry. "Your mom didn't believe him," Darius continued, his voice rising. "But she kept that note, his formula. And she gave it to you without even realizing it." Naomi blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "She never gave me." Darius interrupted, eyes gleaming. "That old leather notebook you keep in your sewing kit? The one with your dad's handwriting all over it? Look inside the back cover. The last page. Those 6 numbers he wrote down? The same ones you used for your lottery ticket. You think you dreamed them, Naomi? But they were already waiting for you." Her stomach dropped. Images flashed in her mind, the faded notebook her mother had handed her when she moved to Atlanta, saying, "Keep this. It was your father's good luck charm." She had never really read it, only flipped through when she needed scrap paper. Darius leaned closer, his voice trembling. "You didn't just win because of chance, Naomi. You won because your father left you the code. I didn't understand it until after I stole the ticket. I read that letter, and for the first time I realized your win wasn't luck. It was legacy." Naomi's hands trembled against the cold glass. "Where's the letter now?" "In the safe," he said. "Still there. I didn't destroy it. But if the police touch that place before you do, they'll take it for evidence. You need to get it first." Naomi's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "You could have told me this years ago. You took everything from me, and now you want redemption?" "I want peace," Darius said quietly. "I can't undo what I did, but maybe this can give you something real. Something more than money." Naomi looked at him for a long, heavy moment. "You always wanted to be the man who built something," she said softly. "But the truth is, the only thing you ever built was regret." Before Darius could reply, the guard called out, "Time's up." Naomi stood. As she turned to leave, Darius spoke one last time. "Naomi, read the letter before you spend a cent. It'll change everything you think you know about your father, and yourself." Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy with clouds. Naomi drove straight home, her hands steady now, her thoughts racing. When she arrived, she walked directly into the bedroom and pulled the old shoeboxes aside. The safe was still there. She knelt, entered the code, his birthday, and the lock clicked open. Inside, beneath an envelope labeled "For Naomi," lay her father's old handwriting, faint but clear. She unfolded the letter slowly, her heart hammering. "My dearest Naomi, if you are reading this, it means life has found you again. I didn't leave you richish, child, I left you understanding. The numbers we chase are never random. Luck is just destiny wearing a disguise. One day these numbers will find you. And when they do, remember this. The real test won't be what you win, but what you lose to keep your soul intact." Naomi pressed the letter to her chest. A strange calm settled over her, like a voice from beyond telling her everything was going to be all right. She looked down at the bottom of the letter and noticed something else scribbled in smaller handwriting. "For whoever holds this, know, there's one more secret I left buried in Atlanta." Naomi froze. What secret? The letter didn't say. But her father's note ended with coordinates, numbers written faintly in pencil. She whispered the digits aloud, confused and curious. And in that quiet apartment, the hum of the refrigerator was the only reply. Naomi folded the letter again, her mind spinning. If her father left another secret behind, it meant her story, and her late husband's downfall, was only the beginning. The morning sun fought through a curtain of gray clouds, spilling dim light into Naomi's apartment. She sat at the kitchen table, her father's letter unfolded before her, her tea untouched. The coordinates stared back at her in faint pencil, numbers that seemed to hum with meaning. She'd barely slept. Darius's words kept replaying in her head. "It'll change everything you think you know about your father, and yourself." Naomi traced the coordinates with her finger, whispering them aloud again. 33.7490, minus 84.3880. Her laptop screen lit up as she typed the digits into Google Maps. The result blinked onto the screen and Naomi's heart skipped. It wasn't just any location, it was downtown Atlanta, right near the old warehouse district. But one building stood out, marked with a faint pin and an old label from decades ago. Rivers Tech Systems, closed since 1998. Rivers Tech Systems, she murmured. That's my last name. A chill crawled up her spine. Had her father owned a business? Her mother had never mentioned it. Naomi's entire life, she believed her father was just a skilled mechanic, an honest man who fixed things and came home smelling like oil and soap. But this? A tech company? That was something entirely different. She folded the letter carefully, slipped it into her bag and grabbed her car keys. She had to know. The old Rivers Tech warehouse sat on the edge of a quiet industrial block, its walls covered in vines and faded graffiti. The chain-link fence out front had been torn open long ago. Naomi parked nearby, clutching her bag tight as she stepped through the gap. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and memories. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, landing on rows of old computer monitors, rusted filing cabinets, and a toppled sign that read, "Innovating the Future, one code at a time." Naomi ran her fingers across the dusty desk, heart racing. She could almost see her father here, smiling, sleeves rolled up, a man with dreams bigger than anyone realized. Then something caught her eye, a locked drawer on the far side of the office, partly hidden beneath fallen papers. The handle was rusted, but the lock was still intact. She searched the room and found a bent screwdriver. After several tries, the lock finally snapped open with a sharp click. Inside lay a metal box, small and surprisingly clean for its age. On top was a folded envelope labeled in her father's familiar handwriting. "For Naomi, when the numbers find you." Her pulse quickened. She tore it open. Inside was a single USB drive and another handwritten note. "Naomi, if you found this, it means the formula worked. The lottery was never just a game, it was a test. I discovered patterns others ignored, but when I tried to report them, powerful people silenced me. I built this drive to prove it, to expose the corruption beneath the system. If the numbers led you here, then fate has chosen you to finish what I couldn't. Be careful. Some secrets are worth fortunes, and others cost lives." Naomi stared at the words, trembling. Her father's discovery hadn't just predicted her win, it had created it. The system itself might have been manipulated, and she now held proof. Before she could process it, the sound of footsteps echoed through the building. Naomi froze. She quickly stuffed the letter and drive into her bag and ducked behind a broken column. The footsteps grew louder, measured, deliberate. A man's voice called out, deep and cold. "Mrs. Rivers. You shouldn't be here." Naomi's stomach dropped. She peeked around the column and saw a tall man in a black coat, his expression unreadable, flanked by two others in dark suits. "How do you know my name?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man smiled thinly. "Because we've been expecting you." Naomi's fingers tightened around her bag. "Who are you?" "I work for the state lottery's private security division," he said smoothly. "Your father's research was confidential property. You have something that doesn't belong to you." Naomi's breath hitched. "This was my father's. You people buried the truth." He sighed. "Mrs. Rivers, please. Let's not make this harder. Hand over the drive and we'll forget this ever happened." Naomi's eyes darted toward the broken window behind her. "And if I don't?" The man stepped closer. "Then you'll end up like your father." Lightning flashed through the window, and for a split second, Naomi saw real danger in his eyes. Without thinking, she turned and bolted. The sound of her footsteps thundered through the hollow halls. One of the men shouted, "Stop her." Naomi sprinted toward the window, leapt onto an overturned table and dove through the opening. Glass shattered as she tumbled outside, hitting the ground hard but clutching her bag tight. She scrambled to her feet, running toward her car. Behind her, engines roared to life. Headlights cut through the fog. Naomi jumped into her Toyota, slammed the door and started the engine. Tires screeched as she sped down the street, rain pouring again, her heart hammering. In the rearview mirror, two black SUVs followed close behind. "God, not now," she whispered, gripping the wheel. She took a sharp turn onto a side street, tires sliding over wet asphalt. The SUVs followed, relentless. She needed somewhere public, somewhere with cameras. Then she saw it, a police precinct less than half a mile ahead. She pressed the accelerator hard. Moments later, she swerved into the parking lot, braked hard and jumped out, running straight for the entrance. Officers inside looked up in surprise as she burst through the doors, soaked and shaking. "Help!" she cried. "They're trying to take something that belonged to my father." The officers rushed toward her. But when she turned back toward the street, the black SUVs were gone. Only rain and fog remained. Naomi stood there, chest heaving, clutching her bag. Inside, the drive seemed to hum faintly like it was alive. Whatever her father had discovered, it wasn't just about luck or money anymore, it was about power. And now, she had inherited every secret that powerful people had once tried to bury. Before we dive deeper, tell us in the comments. What do you think Naomi's father really discovered? Was it just a lottery formula, or something far more dangerous? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you're enjoying the twist so far. The next chapter will reveal the shocking truth behind Naomi's win, and the dark forces determined to silence her forever. The hum of the precinct's fluorescent lights seemed louder than usual. Naomi sat in the small interview room, her wet clothes clinging to her skin, her bag held tightly against her chest like a shield. Two officers stood nearby, one of them typing notes while the other offered her a blanket and a bottle of water. "You said they followed you from the warehouse?" the female officer asked, her tone gentle but alert. "Yes," Naomi replied, voice trembling slightly. "3 men. They knew my name. They said they worked for the lottery's private security, but something about them felt wrong. They wanted this." She opened her bag and pulled out the small metal box. Inside, the USB drive gleamed faintly under the harsh white light. The officer frowned. "And this belonged to your father?" Naomi nodded. "He wrote that it proved something about the lottery. Something people didn't want the world to know." The officers exchanged wary glances. "All right, ma'am. We'll run a quick check on this. But you might want to reach out to the Lottery Commission again. They can confirm whether that department even exists." "I already know it doesn't," Naomi said. "Ms. Alvarez told me this morning that the state doesn't outsource their security. Those men weren't who they said they were." The officers stiffened. The male officer stepped out of the room, speaking quietly into his radio. Naomi leaned back, her heartbeat finally slowing, until she noticed the reflection in the glass wall. A shadow. Someone was standing outside the observation window watching her. Her breath caught. The silhouette was tall, still patient. The female officer turned just in time to see the shadow disappear. "Stay here," she said, hand already on her weapon. She stepped out into the hallway. Naomi listened as her footsteps faded, followed by silence. Then suddenly shouting. A loud crash. Naomi jumped up, clutching the drive. Before she could react, the door burst open. A man in black tactical gear stepped inside, a mask covering his face. He lunged for her. Naomi screamed and swung her bag with all her strength, striking his arm. The drive flew from her grip, skidding across the floor. The man dove for it, but Naomi kicked it under the table. The officer from earlier charged back in, weapon drawn. "Drop it," he barked. The masked man froze, then bolted. The officer chased after him, yelling into his radio. Naomi crouched, breathing hard, her palms slick with sweat. Moments later, the building filled with sirens and shouting. Backup arrived, but the intruder had vanished. When the dust settled, the female officer returned, shaken but unharmed. "He's gone," she said. "No ID, no trace. He knew exactly where to find you." Naomi retrieved the drive from beneath the table, gripping it tightly. "Then whatever's on this is bigger than a game." That night, she stayed under police protection in a hotel near downtown. But sleep refused to come. The images haunted her. The masked man, her father's words, the men in black suits, Darius's confession. She sat by the window, staring at the lights of the city below. Somewhere out there, powerful people were moving in shadows to bury the truth her father had tried to reveal. And somehow she, an ordinary woman who used to sew dresses and dream of peace, was standing right in the middle of it. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Ms. Alvarez. "Naomi, we need to meet. Urgent. Don't tell anyone. I think I know what your father found." Naomi frowned. She typed quickly. "Where?" The reply came almost instantly. "The old lottery data center. 2 a.m. Come alone." Her stomach twisted. It was risky, but she trusted Alvarez. The woman had stood by her through the investigation. If anyone could explain what was happening, it was her. She slipped the USB into her pocket, grabbed her car keys and quietly left the hotel. The old lottery data center sat on the outskirts of town, its sign barely legible through the fog. The parking lot was empty except for Alvarez's silver sedan, parked near the entrance. Naomi's headlights swept across the cracked pavement as she pulled in. She stepped out, clutching her coat tight. "Ms. Alvarez?" she called softly. "Over here," came the reply. Alvarez emerged from the shadows, her red blazer replaced by a long coat. Her expression was tense. "You made it," she said quickly. "Good. We don't have much time." Naomi frowned. "What's going on? You said you knew what my father found." Alvarez nodded. "Your father wasn't just studying patterns, Naomi. He uncovered a network, a data loop hidden in the lottery system. It rerouted millions in unclaimed winnings into private accounts. He built that formula to expose the manipulation, not to win. When he realized what he'd found, they silenced him." Naomi's blood ran cold. "Are you saying he was killed?" Alvarez's eyes darkened. "Yes. It was made to look like an accident. And now, because you have that drive, they'll come for you too." Naomi stepped back. "Then why bring me here? We can go to the police." Alvarez shook her head. "The police won't help. Some of them are already paid off. We need to get the data off that drive and release it ourselves." Naomi hesitated. "How do I know I can trust you?" Alvarez took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Because I worked with your father. I helped him write part of the formula. He made me promise, if anything happened to him, I'd find you." Naomi's throat tightened. "You knew him?" "Yes," Alvarez said softly. "He was brilliant. And stubborn. Just like you." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Alvarez glanced at the building. "Come. There's a secure server inside. Once we upload the data, it's out of their reach forever." Naomi nodded, clutching the USB. Together, they stepped into the dimly lit hallway. But as they reached the control room, Naomi noticed something strange. The main console was already powered on. Lines of code flashed across the monitors. Someone had been there recently. She turned to Alvarez. "I thought you said this place was abandoned." Alvarez's expression didn't change. "It should be. Unless." Before Naomi could respond, a faint click echoed through the room. She looked down. Alvarez was holding a small pistol, aimed directly at her. Naomi froze. "Ms. Alvarez, what are you doing?" The woman's voice softened, almost regretful. "I'm sorry, Naomi. But I can't let you release that data. The people funding this system, they own everything. The banks, the courts, even the media. If this gets out, they'll destroy us both. I made a deal to survive." Naomi's voice shook. "So you lied. You were never helping me, you were helping them." Alvarez sighed. "You were never supposed to find the drive. Your father was brilliant but naive. He didn't understand that some truths aren't meant for the world." Naomi took a step back, gripping the USB. "Then you'll have to shoot me to take it." Alvarez's eyes hardened. "Don't make me." For a moment, the two women stood locked in silence. The teacher and the student, the betrayer and the betrayed. Then, without warning, Naomi hurled her bag at the nearest monitor. Sparks flew. The screen burst into flames, filling the room with smoke. Alvarez flinched, firing a shot that whizzed past Naomi's ear. Naomi ducked, grabbed a metal pipe from the floor and swung it, striking the pistol from Alvarez's hand. It clattered across the floor. "Naomi!" Alvarez shouted, coughing. "You don't know what you're doing." Naomi snatched the USB, clutching it tight. "You're right," she said fiercely. "But I know who I am now. And I know what my father died for." She ran. Bullets echoed behind her, ricocheting off metal beams. Smoke and alarm lights filled the air. Naomi burst through the exit and into the stormy night, gasping for air. Behind her, the data center caught fire, flames licking the sky. Alvarez's figure disappeared in the smoke. Naomi stumbled to her car, drenched and trembling. She looked down at the USB drive in her hand, miraculously unharmed. Inside it lay the truth, her father's legacy, the secret that had cost him his life. And as the first police sirens wailed in the distance, Naomi whispered to herself, "I won't run anymore. I'll finish what you started, Dad." She turned the key, started the engine and drove into the storm. The storm hadn't stopped by dawn. Lightning flickered across the skyline as Naomi drove through the drenched streets of Atlanta, windshield wipers fighting against the downpour. The USB drive lay on the passenger seat beside her, a tiny object holding the weight of truth, betrayal, and legacy. Her mind was a whirlwind. Darius's confession. Her father's letter. Ms. Alvarez's deception. Every piece of the puzzle finally made sense. Her father hadn't just created a formula to win, he'd built a weapon against corruption. And everyone who touched it had paid a price. Naomi pulled into the underground garage of the Atlanta Herald, the largest newspaper in the state. She had made her choice hours ago, the moment she escaped the burning data center. She wasn't going to run or hide. She was going to expose the truth, no matter the cost. Inside the lobby, she approached the front desk, drenched and shaking but determined. "I need to speak with your lead investigative journalist," she said. "It's about the state lottery system. It's urgent." The receptionist blinked, startled. "Do you have an appointment?" Naomi placed the USB on the counter. "No. But if you don't call someone right now, a story that's bigger than any jackpot in history might disappear forever." Something in her tone, steady, raw, almost prophetic, made the woman hesitate. Then she reached for the phone. Minutes later, a tall man in glasses rushed out of the elevator. "I'm Derek Hughes, senior editor. You said you had evidence?" Naomi nodded. "Not just evidence. A confession. A formula. And proof that people died to keep it hidden." They moved to a conference room. Naomi plugged the USB into Derek's laptop. Files filled the screen. Spreadsheets, internal memos, hidden transfers totaling hundreds of millions redirected from unclaimed lottery winnings into private offshore accounts. Derek's eyes widened. "My God, this is a bombshell." Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she pointed to a document labeled Project Fortune Loop. "That's the system my father discovered. The one he was silenced for." Derek scrolled rapidly, his breath quickening. "Naomi, this implicates half the state treasury. These transactions connect to shell companies, fake charities. Some of these names are elected officials." Naomi's voice cracked. "He died trying to bring this to light. They made it look like an accident." Derek looked at her, astonished. "And now they're after you?" "Yes," she said. "They've already killed to protect this secret. They'll do it again if this doesn't go public fast." He nodded grimly. "Then we don't wait." Within hours, the newsroom was alive with motion. Journalists verified documents, legal advisors reviewed every file line by line, and Derek coordinated with national outlets. By evening, the story hit the airwaves and flooded social media. Lottery corruption scandal explodes. $1.3 billion embezzled over 20 years. Fraud network exposed. Whistleblower's daughter reveals cover-up. Naomi watched the headlines spread from her hotel room, heart pounding. The truth was finally out. Then came the knock. Naomi froze. She approached the door cautiously. "Mrs. Rivers?" The voice was male, steady, calm. She opened the door slightly. A man in a black coat stood there, rain dripping from his brim. "Who are you?" she asked sharply. He reached into his pocket slowly and handed her a badge. "Special Agent Warren, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We saw the story. We need to talk." Naomi hesitated, studying his face. "If this is about protection, I've already spoken to the police." He shook his head. "This is bigger than state police, ma'am. Your father's research triggered an ongoing federal investigation years ago. But without his proof, we couldn't move forward. What you've given the media has just blown it wide open." Naomi blinked. "You mean, my father wasn't alone?" Agent Warren nodded. "He was working with us in secret before he disappeared. His death hit us hard." "You just gave him justice, Mrs. Rivers?" Tears welled in her eyes. "He died thinking no one would ever believe him." The agent's expression softened. "Now the whole country does." He handed her an envelope. "This is your federal protection order. You'll be safe until the trials are over. And there's something else." Naomi opened the envelope. Inside was a faded photograph, her father standing beside a much younger Ms. Alvarez, both smiling outside the old Rivers Tech building. On the back, her father had written in neat letters, "For Naomi. Truth always finds its voice." Naomi pressed the photo to her chest. "He never stopped believing." "No," Agent Warren said quietly. "And neither did you." Weeks passed. Arrests were made. High-profile names resigned. The lottery system was shut down for a complete overhaul. Across the country, people hailed Naomi as a hero, the woman who turned her pain into justice. But she never once flaunted her fortune. Instead, she used it the way her father would have wanted. She founded the Rivers Foundation, dedicated to supporting whistleblowers, educating women in technology, and funding scholarships for children of public servants. On the day of the foundation's launch, Naomi stood at the podium, looking out at the cameras, microphones, and flashing lights. She smiled, not the nervous smile of someone overwhelmed by attention, but the calm, grounded smile of someone who had walked through fire and come out whole. "My father once told me," she began, "that luck is destiny wearing a disguise. But I've learned that truth wears one too. It hides in silence until someone is brave enough to speak it out loud." Applause rippled through the hall. "This story began with betrayal," she continued, "but it ends with legacy. A man tried to take my name off a ticket, but God put it back on something greater. So today I dedicate everything I have not to money but to truth. Because truth never expires and it never loses its power. The audience rose to their feet. Naomi's eyes glistened as she looked at the large portrait of her father displayed behind her. "Daddy," she whispered under her breath, "I kept your promise." The lights above shimmered like a quiet blessing. Later that night, Naomi stood alone on the foundation's rooftop, looking out over the glowing city. The wind tugged gently at her braids. In her hand she held the same pink lottery ticket, now framed behind glass, her name still faintly visible across the back. She smiled softly. $700 million had once torn her world apart. But now it had built something unbreakable. The sound of thunder rolled far in the distance, soft, fading, like the closing of an old story. And for the first time in years, Naomi Rivers finally felt at peace. If you followed Naomi's journey till the end, what lesson stood out to you the most? Would you have risked everything to expose the truth even if it meant losing your safety? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love this story, subscribe and share it with someone who believes that truth always finds its way home.